Welcome to Everything Went Black. I'd like to thank everyone who stuck this out for this couple of year period where this podcast has been not as active as it once was. And I'd also like to thank everyone who migrated over here from Metal Matters. And that was a great experience. And I encourage everyone to continue listening to Fred and Mike over there. And they're doing a great job so far. And I thank everyone who listens to our flagship Road to Ruin episode with me and Randy Larson. I know you guys like when Randy comes on. We've been friends for decades at this point. And last week was, kind of like a origins of, like when anyone out there reads comics, comics out there will be familiar with the origin issue. When you talk about how Spider-Man became Spider-Man or how Batman became, a vigilante crime fighter, like that kind of thing. So this week, you've if anyone has listened to either this show or Metal Matters, you guys all know Jackie Smit, and he's the host of Into the Necrosphere. And he's come on this week. We're just going to bullshit, man. We're just going to have a BS session. But we're also going to honor LG Petrov, the legendary frontman of Entombed. A very important band. There's been a lot of death over the last year, and unfortunately, the Grim Reaper has claimed LG Petrov, and I was shocked. Well, I can't say I was shocked because I know that he was struggling with stage 4 cancer, but nonetheless, I was saddened by his passing. So, Jackie, how are you?
All good, man. Very, very busy at work, but very relieved that the sun is starting to shine in the UK. I'm feeling healthy, and podcast is kind of ticking along, no complaints from my side, man.
Well, you mentioned that you're healthy, which I'm glad to hear, but I also. You shared with me that you came down with COVID-19. So how is that exactly?
So I know we spoke about this before we started recording. So I'll kind of go back to where it started. I very, very rarely ever get sick. I mean, the last time I visited a hospital for any reason, I was 2 years old, and it was to get grommets put into my ears. I've never been to a hospital. The last time I was sick to where I had to take a day off work was about 5-6 years ago. And anyway, I woke up one morning feeling, just like off. And I can't put my finger on exactly, what was the first symptom to start coming on. But I think you know what I mean when I say things just didn't feel. Something just didn't feel right. And as the day progressed, it started getting rapidly worse. I started to feel feverish. I felt really, really tired. I had this really weird taste in my mouth, that sort of seemed to overpower everything. And then again, to describe the taste, it just tasted like nothing. And then I got hit with fucking something diabolical in my stomach that. It was like if the xenomorph on Alien jumped out of my belly at any point during the day, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Oh, man.
And actually, to be fair, because my stomach was bothering me most, I didn't actually think that I had COVID. But I was on a conference call, and I said to one of my colleagues, I feel really shit. And she said, what are your symptoms? And I mentioned, I'm feeling a bit feverish. My taste is gone. My stomach is really killing me. And she said, you need to go get yourself tested for COVID. And I was like, well, but, I don't have a cough or anything. And she's like, no, well, stomach is one of it. And sure enough, I logged off pretty soon after that call. Literally just got straight into bed, slept for about 14, 15 hours.
Oh, man.
Then my girlfriend dragged me to one of the COVID testing centers. I got the whole kind of nose swab done and stuff. I came back positive 2 days later. I was lucky in that the disease seemed to kind of come and go with me relatively quickly, and I've been fortunate in my life that that's always been the case. But I'd say from the point where that I mentioned till about 5 days in, it was just absolute hell. I felt like in addition to the temperature and my stomach just being a complete mess, I had a little bit of difficulty breathing. But the other thing that really got me was the headaches. And it wasn't a headache that I've ever felt before. I mean, I've had migraines and I've had headaches I've had tension headaches and things like that, like everybody's had. But this was literally like somebody was standing on the back of my skull with a steel-toed boot for just hours on end. And it didn't matter how many painkillers I took, it just didn't go away. But the worst of it I got out of so this started on a Monday, and kind of by Saturday, I was the first time that I kind of got out of bed and I started moving around, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel kind of human again. The one thing that it did leave me with, though, was my stomach was probably fucked up for at least 3-4 weeks afterwards.
Damn.
And I also had the craziest heartburn that I've ever had in my entire life until very recently. And it was something that started around about the time that happened. So, I think we mentioned this offline, but I know a lot of people have very different experiences of COVID. And like I said, I mean, I didn't even think that I had it, but it's whatever variant I had, like, fuck, it's passed. That's all I'll say.
Damn, that sounds pretty extreme. But you didn't have to go into the hospital at any time during this.
No.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
No, so fortunately I kept the streak alive. So I'm turning 41 in 2.5 weeks' time, actually. So I've fingers crossed I can keep the streak alive for at least another couple of years before I ever have to go to a hospital.
Nice. Yeah, man. We were talking about this too. I don't know how I haven't gotten sick. I'm not one of these nut jobs that lives in Texas or Florida who's just throwing caution to the wind and partying like it's 1999. Like but I do take risks, man. And I live by myself. I don't have anyone here with me except for my cat, and I don't really see anybody. But I do go to the gym and train, and I'm in close quarters with other guys and people in general for a couple hours a day. But I get tested every 2 weeks. I'm always negative. Nobody at my gym has gotten sick. And I just feel fortunate. And at times, I kind of feel like I'm on borrowed time sometimes, like in my darkest moments when I'm here by myself in the middle of the night. And I feel like some kind of, you don't always feel good. Sometimes you feel a little under the weather, man. And I'm like, oh, this is it. I'm going to get COVID. And then I, schedule a test and I turn out to be negative. And I am so thankful for that because I hear stories like this. And I am, fingers crossed, keep the streak alive, as you say.
Yeah.
I just want to make it through this whole thing,
Yeah, no, I mean, I would definitely not say that. I mean, our gyms and stuff are shut here. So, the gyms haven't been open for probably like 2-3 months now. They were only open for a short period of time, in between various lockdowns anyway. I also live in the countryside, so it's not like I have any way to go. I think the only place I could possibly have caught it, I go and pick up my daughter every second weekend, and I meet her mother halfway between our two houses, and it's probably about an 80-mile drive to where I pick her up. There's a supermarket there, and I went into the supermarket, and I know that, and we bought a couple of things, and came right out, got my daughter, came home. The only thing I could have picked it up from was the supermarket. There's literally no other place I could have been exposed to it. And how and where I picked it up there, I have no idea either. But either way, my daughter actually had it too. Quite a while back. She was probably like September last year, but she's 6 years old. She shrugged it off. Her response to me when her mother sent me a text and said, "Oh, Meadow has COVID," and I was like, "Oh shit, this is fucking terrible." Jumped on the phone straight away. Called her up, and her first words to me was, "Yeah, I've got COVID. What's the big deal?"
Yeah, well, good for her, man. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I had a family member get it, and it's very odd because it's my cousin, and he's married. They have a kid, and his wife is very extreme, and I'll just leave it at that. Uh, she required everyone to wear a mask, even in the house, like in the family unit. So they would sit around watching TV with masks on. Okay.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, okay, hey, you got it. Whatever makes you comfortable, man. Do you. I'm like not gonna judge anyone for wearing a mask or doing whatever. You gotta make yourself feel safe. Despite all of these precautions, my cousin still ended up getting COVID-19. And, then he was banished to the basement until it ran its course, and he got tested, and he, came up negative, and then he was allowed to rejoin the family. So, yeah, the whole thing is so fucking mysterious to me, man.
It is. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but I know Sweden as an example. I mean, their curve seemed to be very similar to a lot of other European countries that had really, really strict lockdowns. And I mean, most people know Sweden didn't lock down whatsoever. They had a couple of guidelines and things like that, but as far as I know, that's about where it ended. It might have changed since, but it is weird. I mean, again, I don't really know what the disparities between Texas and California at the moment. But again, I mean, Texas has been a lot more lax with their COVID rules, obviously. But I think in terms of deaths per 100 million or deaths per million, I think California is still pretty significantly ahead of that.
Yeah, they definitely got hit really hard, and they did have very extreme measures put in place. Texas, applied that cowboy mentality, which, of course, I have issues with being a cowboy in the 21st century. And they've also had a lot of problems, as well as Florida.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the numbers now. So New Jersey was worst hit in terms of deaths per 100,000 people. 268 deaths per 100,000 people. Then straight after you've got New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and then I mean it must be like 21st or 22nd is Texas. Florida is 3 spots on. Sandwich between Ohio and District of Columbia.
Yeah, I imagine the population density in the Northeast probably has a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You can drive for days in Texas and not see anybody. But
it's all the barbecue they eat. the pepper and the barbecue kills off the disease.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Or Leatherface just eats everyone that's infected. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, in general, I feel like things are improving over here. The vaccine's rolling out. Whatever people have their feelings about that. I have full intention of getting vaccinated when it's available for people in my bracket, and I'm hoping to get the Johnson & Johnson one because that's the more satanic of the vaccines. That's the one that the Christians don't like that one. Yeah.
You're embracing the microchip being implanted under your skin so you could be subservient to the beast.
Well, the Christians have a big problem with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because apparently it utilized stem cells from aborted embryos. So
yeah,
if Christians have a problem with it, then I'm good with it.
Then it's an immediate endorsement. Yeah, I mean, I think over here we don't really have a choice what we get. With obviously it's socialized medicine, so you get a letter in the post, or I think you get a text message from your GP, and they just say, right, it's your turn, come in. So, but as far as I know, I mean, over here it seems like statistically we've rolled out the vaccine far quicker than any other European country. And what they've said here is I know the gyms reopen in April, which is a godsend. May time, I think they're going to reopen all of the restaurants and bars and things like that, and the plan is to have lockdown lifted entirely by June.
So let me just for clarification, in England right now, everything's still closed for the most part?
Yeah, wow. Almost everything is still shut. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. It doesn't really feel like a lot of people are paying attention. Like as an example, I drove to go fetch my daughter this evening, and it is. I mean, the roads are really busy. It's not, people clearly aren't, sitting indoors, trying to keep shielding themselves and their families. But restaurants are shut. Most stores are shut. Gyms are definitely shut. So all of that sort of thing is still being enforced pretty heavily. And that's obviously now going to lift. There's a timeline to lift everything.
Yeah, things out here are phasing, and I just had a couple of days off from work, so I went down to Red Bank in New Jersey, went to a comic book store. I actually ate outside at a diner for the first time in over a year, and it felt weird. I got to be honest. It felt kind of uncomfortable, but it was nonetheless still very enjoyable. I was sitting outside. My interaction with the waitress felt weird because I hadn't ordered food from someone in a long time, and
Yeah.
I was so like preoccupied with the idea of what I was doing that I forgot what I wanted to order, and I just ordered something completely different than I had initially intended. So yeah.
Yeah, well, we had this brief pause in everything last year, and the restaurants and stuff opened, and it was great. I mean, you had to sit a little further apart than you normally would, but we made full use of that. I say I live in the middle of nowhere, but we do have a lot of really nice country pubs. Probably within like a 20-25 mile radius from us. So it's nice on a Sunday to jump in the car and just go and find one and go there and have lunch. And we definitely did that. But yeah, come Christmas time, they shut everything.
Wow. It's funny. I earlier today I went down to our practice space, and we've actually been rehearsing, we're filming shit, and that at least the band stuff is still full on for the most part. As much as it can be without playing gigs. But I was driving back, and there's like mad strip clubs down here. So it's like I'm driving back to my place, and and it dawned on me. I'm like, strip clubs are open. There's like all these cars like in the parking lot, and I wonder if strippers are wearing masks while they're dancing.
But wasn't there some massive protest, or there was some big thing to try and get strip clubs and brothels reopened in Vegas last year? I'm trying to think exactly where I read about it, but not that I visit particularly nefarious sites, but I do. I know there was a big deal made about it because obviously as far as transmission is concerned, if you're going to get it, you're going to get it through visiting a lady or a gentleman of ill repute. But again, I doubt very much the strip clubs are open. Yeah, that's for sure.
I just think it's funny that what's open and what's not. Like this. I mean, I am myself personally. I'm not a big fan of strip clubs. Like I've been to my share over the years, but it's just they're very sad to me. And it makes me feel uncomfortable and kind of weird being in a strip club, and I just don't enjoy it. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to get points with anyone here. I'm just being honest.
You're turning around. Hey, ladies, just so you know, I'm not one of those guys.
Yeah, I'm a good listener, and I don't go to strip clubs, and I'm creative, artistically inclined. So any women out there, no.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Back in my wild days, my 20s, when I was doing like my first job where I was earning actual money. I mean, I spent an extortionate amount of money at strip clubs, but that's way behind me now. I mean, I'm too fucking stingy. I mean, I'm stingy on one hand, but I've got expensive hobbies on the other. So when you get into high-end hi-fi, anytime that I think of doing something like that now, I'm like, well, I could be spending it on this cable, or I could be spending it on, I could be putting money towards a new amplifier or something, equally nerdy like that. I couldn't imagine parting with that amount of money now, and certainly not as easily as I used to when I was young.
Yeah, it's the money thing too, man. It's like in the times I've gone there, they really want you to spend money on drinks and and then you know, there's all this other weird shit that goes on, which is like kind of strange.
Dude, they're fucking amazing. I mean, you know, in terms of their ability to, and I'm more power to them. I'm fully supportive of women doing that. If guys want to be idiots and be gullible and fall for that sort of thing, you know, like I said, go for it. But they're brilliant in the way that they can get guys to part with their money, and the guys feel like they're you know, gaining from the bargain. You know, they always say like a sale's made when both sides are happy, and the guys are fucking ecstatic.
Yeah, I mean, that dynamic of like the kind of like you know, like the male frailty being, because you know, I mean, the reality is that men are pretty frail. Their egos are very delicate, and yeah, I mean, we're scared, you know, of women sometimes, and that's played out in those kinds of dynamics. And you know, and I'm not, once again, man, I'm not criticizing anyone out there. You guys wanted, that's your thing, great, good for you. For me, I just put my, you know, I like other things, and I don't like to, you know, it's just not my kind of thing. And I mean, in the last few years on tour, like sometimes you're in a situation where it's like you're with your, you know, your guys in your band, and someone's like a friend of ours in Portland, you know, she worked at a strip club. She wasn't a stripper, but she worked there. So she's, you know, after we played a show in Portland, she's like, oh, let's go to the whatever. And we're like, all right. I'm like, okay, well, you know, why not? And it's just kind of boring to me. And I don't know. It's just, you know, maybe, I don't know. It's just not my kind of thing. But in Portland, there's a lot of this female empowerment stuff going on, which that's pretty cool, you know. But I just don't get a lot out of it, you know.
No, and I'm the same. I agree with you. Nowadays, you know, again, when I was in my early 20s, it was the fucking best thing on the face of the earth. But when you know, as I've grown older, it's just the novelty has worn off, and you know, now I kind of I for a period of time, about probably 4 years ago, I dated a girl who had an OnlyFans page, and she showed me how the sausage is made, and some of the weird shit I saw there. It just kind of, you look at it and you go, I don't want to be associated with people like that. With not people like her, but people that would, you know, pay her to do the stuff that they have her do. And she was just on camera. She never did anything beyond that. But I mean, like as an example, she showed me, when she first told me the story, I didn't believe her, and she actually showed me the message exchanges to confirm it. A guy paid her £3,000 to get on camera and insult him for a half hour straight. Literally just jump on camera and berate him and call him an asshole. And so I said to her, well, you know, is this some super rich, you know, finance wizard who just has so much money that he's bored and he just wants to get his rocks off in like a weird way? And she was like, no, he's a like total working stiff. He's a driver for a courier company. And that was his Christmas bonus.
Oh, man.
That he used to fulfill his wish. And she said to me, like, you know, I actually feel bad sometimes because it's so easy with some of these guys. Like, they're just desperate. They have this weird, like, fetish or this weird craving to do a certain thing. And they'll just pay whatever you ask them to do it.
Yeah, man. I'm going to, in the immortal words of Dick Rude in Repo Man, I blame it all on society. I just think that all this kind of like weird neurotic things that go on have to do with just this like fucked up world we live in and how we interact as people. And I don't know, it's just.
I agree.
Yeah,
well, it's like a lack of connection in people nowadays. You know, increasingly people live their lives entirely online, entirely in their social media echo chamber, and they don't. The weirdest thing is when you try and speak to them in real life, they're incredibly awkward. You know, and incredibly kind of shy and retiring, you know, can't communicate properly, can't speak precisely, and then, you know, when they're on Twitter under, you know, whatever fucking stupid superhero avatar hashtag they are, you know, they're the bravest people under the sun.
Do you go on Twitter a lot? Is that a platform that you fuck around with?
No, I use it for Into the Necrosphere. I used to be on it, like in a personal capacity, but it's never been something I've had any particular interest. I mean, I have no interest in arguing with people about anything online. And I think Twitter personally is a cesspool. I mean, I think all social media, quite frankly, I use social media for the most part for to keep in touch with family back in South Africa because it's just easier than phoning people, once a week. And then I use it for Into the Necrosphere. But if it were up to me, I wish social media could be eradicated with the face of the earth. I think it's worse. I think from a you're talking about society. I think it's the worst thing, in my opinion, one of the worst things to happen to civil society in our lifetimes.
I 100% agree, man. And I don't ever go on Twitter. I mean, I have everything like auto posted, and like you, just for promoting stuff that's going on. For example, like the podcasts and the band, and whenever I write something that's cool, I put it out there. But like I don't go on there looking to fight with people or check out some sketchy like news source or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing, and everybody on Twitter is a fucking expert in something, whether it's politics or, they're an expert in, airborne viruses or climate change, and it's absolutely, it's mind-boggling to me how people can get drawn into it the way that they do.
Yeah, I agree that it's sort of the bane of our existence right now, and just without getting into another tangent about politics, it's the unraveling of our society in some ways is just, it's so easy to misinform people or disinform people, and manipulate people, and that's like one of the biggest obstacles, I think, worldwide.
This is the thing, the part of the problem with social media is that it gave every fucking idiot with an internet connection license to be an expert. It created this idea in their minds that their voice counts and their voice should be heard. Whereas back in my day, you needed to have some credentials about you to appear on the news. You needed to have education. You needed to have a track record in your field of expertise to appear as an expert on the news, or to write a book or whatever the case may be, or to be in a position where you're kind of held up as a thought leader. I think you kind of have these dual tangents at the moment where we've got this crazy everybody has 5 minutes of fame on social media phenomenon, combined with this notion in society where celebrities are held up as these deities and these idols. And I mean, it kind of collides and creates the clusterfuck that you see before us. I mean, it's at a point where Twitter is actively informing political policy in the US and in other, particularly Western countries. I just find it insane.
Yeah, it is very, very crazy, and very like disconcerting.
Yeah.
I mean, I might even go a step further and say just mobile technology kind of sucks, because though I enjoy some, I mean, hey, I understand that having a mobile phone with, for navigation purposes and information is great. But, people can get to you any time of the day, man. And I never fucking liked that about having a mobile phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember, and I've probably talked about this a few times already, but like back in the heyday of the 90s, like when I was like a young man, coming through the world, I just remember being able to get away from everyone. Like I lived in a house, I was like 23 years old or whatever, and like I lived in a house with a bunch of other, reprobates that, punk rock guys, whatever. And we had a landline, and I would come home from work and I would just go out. I would go walk. One time I walked for like just two hours just by myself, like way out. I lived in Boston at the time, so I was like in the suburbs. I'd left the city limits, and I was out in a town called Arlington, just on foot. You know what I mean? And no one was able to get in touch with me. No one knew where I was. There was no messages. There was no texting. I wasn't looking at Instagram. I wasn't taking photographs. So, Joe, check this out, or this is what I had for dinner. And when I got home, there was like a message on our message board that, someone called me or whatever. And that was how, and I'm like, I'll call him back tomorrow. You know what I mean? And I just remember mentally being in a way more positive space during those days, you know, than I am now. Now I'm like, I'm always anxious. I always have like, you know, oh yeah, someone's trying to get a hold of me for this, or my job is like, you know, trying to use like MS Teams to contact me about something, you know, or, oh yeah, this email came from the record label, or, you know, this and that, and, you know, social media, blah, 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 all this crazy shit, you know?
Yeah, the noise never ends. I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood again the other night, and I was, first thought that came to mind as I was about 3/4 of the way through watching the movie, I was like, the 60s weren't perfect, but man, I would have fucking loved to have lived in that time.
Oh.
Life to me just seemed to have so much more richness and so much more meaning to it than it does now.
I would say that extended all the way into the right before mobile technology, man. I think that people, you had to, like, if you wanted to interact with somebody socially, you had to be with them, you know?
Yeah.
And if you wanted to be alone, you could really be alone, man. And that's, you know, that I like that. Like nowadays, you're never really alone because you have this leash that connects you to everyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it also extends right through to music. I've lamented this a lot on my own podcast, but I really believe that mobile technology, the internet, ultimately ended up devaluing music. I suspect you're a little older than I am, but you have come from the same school of thought where, you know, back in the day when, you know, you were getting new music. For me, a lot of the stuff that I was getting was speculative because I didn't know anybody around me who listened to any of the stuff that I was into. I was just kind of getting into all these things by myself. Eventually, I met up with somebody who's now, you know, one of my best friends, or to this day, actually. You know, and he and I would kind of, you know, we would page through a Nuclear Blast catalog, try and decipher some of the German in there. And then if a band sounded cool to us, then we would order that, and then you'd have to wait 3 months for the box to arrive, and then, you know, when it does finally come, I mean, that CD or those CDs that you bought, that's like the most prized possession, or the most valuable thing to you for at least the next 6 months. But there was a magic to that, and there was like a sense of discovery there. You know, you made friends through, you know, the tape trading scene and all those sorts of things. And then when people got to a point where they can literally just hit play on Spotify, and whatever music they want to hear is you know, seconds away, it's I think that it devalued the art, and I think you see that translated into how people behave at shows, as an example. I remember being at shows in like 2002 or 2003, and the crowds were going fucking insane. I mean, just like you'd be at a Slayer show and you'd literally be afraid for your life. And then I contrast that to my experience of seeing Slayer on their final show here in the UK when they played at Wembley. And there were people headbanging. There was a little mosh pit that opened up, but I mean, everyone for the most part just stood staring at the stage. And I thought to myself, like, there you go. That is literally, if ever that's I mean, either it's caused by the fact that Slayer fans got old, or it's caused by the fact that too much is available to people and they no longer appreciate it the way that they used to.
I think you got a point there, actually, about too much being available and like unlimited, you know, like options, you know. But I have to say about Slayer, I have two very different experiences over the last couple of years. When Slayer did that, what is it, like the Monster Energy drink thing they did? I don't know what the hell it is, Inferno or whatever. It's like they were doing these like package tours that would have them as a headliner, and they'd have like Hell Yeah would be on the bill or something like that. And but it was the year that it was Slayer and King Diamond, which was awesome. Yeah. And I saw them at the PNC Arts Center out here in Jersey, and there was like, I mean, I gotta tell you, man, it looked like there was like maybe 100 people at the show, and it was like outside in this like, you know, pavilion, you know, and stuff like that. And there were so few people that we actually were able to go from the cheap seats on the lawn and actually sit down in the pavilion. You know what I mean? That's how empty it was. All right. Their farewell tour same venue, fucking packed, and people just going nuts. Like people on the lawn going crazy too. And of course, that was like a stacked bill. It was like, Behemoth, Anthrax, it was like an insane Testament played. It was like an amazing show, and probably the fact that it was their final, farewell tour, allegedly, that people were just coming out. But it made me feel good that they were able to like send us all off with like a sick like show like that,
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. They were great when I saw them at Wembley for their last show. I thought they played a great show. I would have preferred them to ditch most of the new stuff out of the set list, but you can't have it all. But they're very, very good, and we got a really cool lineup here as well. They had Obituary opening for them. They also had Anthrax. They had Lamb of God. Lamb of God were great. Obituary were fucking awesome, and I was so happy that Obituary were invited to be on that tour, because I felt like they deserved that degree of comeuppance.
Yeah.
The audience just they didn't, that kind of that I don't know what the word is, frenzy, but that real sort of adoration and that passion that you had in audiences in the 90s and the early 2000s. I haven't really seen it anyway. The only time I actually ever saw it was at a Rammstein show, and I'd say that's the first time I've really seen that in the last kind of 10 years. I've been to tons of death metal, black metal, bigger bands, smaller bands. I just think that they're spoiled. It's not like when we were coming up. Just getting a music video of a band sometimes would be like the most amazing thing ever. Getting like a shittily recorded live clip of a band. I remember when I was getting into death metal, Morbid Angel were one of the gateway bands. I remember getting, and maybe it was more so in South Africa because we also only got MTV when I was about 15 or 16 years old. I got an interview that David Vincent did in 1993 with Vanessa Warwick, and there was like these very short clips of them playing live on. But I mean, I must have watched that video 300-400 times just to see those little clips, and every time you see it, you're so excited. It's like, all your Christmases come at once.
Yeah.
But it's because it was so difficult to get a hold of all of that stuff.
Yeah, I like that, man. And I don't know if you probably might not remember this, but there was also, this might have been a little bit before your time, there was like these video magazines that would come out too.
Yeah.
There would be like, and a lot of it was like, kind of more in the modern, primitive, industrial kind of thing. Like you'd have like these video magazines of like Crash Worship and stuff like that, and Throbbing Gristle and all that. Sort of cum transmissions and all that. I really miss stuff like that, because now it's like all you got to do is like pull your phone up and look on YouTube and see all these things. But
yeah, exactly.
It's too populist. It's not doesn't cater to the elitism that I like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, like the way that I used to choose music back in, back in those New Global catalog days, I would literally, because I didn't have enough money to afford every metal magazine, and then because they were imported, and I was living in South Africa, metal magazines were really expensive. So I'd go to the newsagent, dig around and find a copy of Metal Maniacs or Terrorizer or Rip or whatever was there. And then I would page through it, and any band that looked badass or had a T-shirt on that looked cool, or if I read a review of a band that the way they described it sounded cool, that's what would go onto the order. And the stuff that I discovered that way, it's a fucking laundry list of great music. Samael, Ceremony of Opposites, Moonspell, Wolfheart, and Under the Moonspell. I remember buying those two at the same time. I bought the first two Septic Flesh records that way. Immortal, Battles of the North, Emperor, In the Nightside Eclipse, Burzum. I mean, it was like one great find after the other, but I didn't know anyone who was into that, so I was discovering all of that stuff for myself. But that was part of the fun.
Yeah, man, that's like one of the best ways to find good stuff. It's just just go off on a whim because it looks cool,
Yeah.
So the last year, there's been a lot of death, man. People have lost loved ones and a lot of luminaries in the music and the arts world in general have passed. And most recently, LG Petrov from Entombed, the legendary vocalist, passed. And are you an Entombed fan?
Yeah, massive Entombed fan. And when I mentioned before about gateway bands, Morbid Angel was one. Entombed was definitely another. I think if I hadn't discovered Wolverine Blues, I think I wouldn't have made the transition into extreme music quite as quickly as I did. But that record was one that there was a lot of hype around at the time, so it was another one of those kind of speculative discoveries. But as soon as I got it, I remember just playing that record to death for probably about 2-3 months straight. And it's still something when the news about LG came, I went back and I listened to a lot of the old stuff again. And it's still a record that really holds up well to this day. I know a lot of people when it came out didn't like it because it was such a step change away from Left Hand Path and Clandestine, but I think it's an awesome record.
Yeah, Wolverine Blues, though I was into death metal, was the record that drew me in because it was so catchy. And I mean, there was like a lot of melody in those riffs, and Petrov's vocals had this like, you could identify with it if you were into like rock music. There were these kind of bluesy riffs, which I also found that interesting that they were Swedish and they were into the blues. You know what I mean? And yeah, and a lot of people really dug on that record. Though I like Nihilist and Left Hand Path, Clandestine, like those are great records, and I liked them. But I think when Wolverine Blues came out and it was such a departure, it really piqued my interest because I never really considered like death metal having that crossover into like rock music. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I absolutely agree with you on how catchy it is. I mean, the song Wolverine Blues, Blood Song, Hollow Man, the kind of standouts from that record. I mean, they super catchy and super memorable. And the thing for me as well, it's always been that way, and it still is to this day. I like bands that have kind of a uniqueness to them, and I also like it when on a record where the songs sound self-contained. Like I can remember one song from the next, which is why a lot of death metal put me off and continues to put me off because a lot of it is extremely technical, incredibly well played. But if you put a gun to my head and say, give me a lyric or give me like a memorable moment of the album after I've listened to it for the first couple of times, I'd be hard pressed to do so. But Wolverine Blues, totally different. The first time that you hear that ending of Blood Song, where LG is just yelling, "I suck your blood," and then right at the end, "I fuck your blood." it's fucking stupid, man. It's stupid in a brilliant way. You know what I mean? Like, and you had that a lot with those '90s bands as well. There was always like they would sometimes take the theatrics to this like very, I think, knowingly tongue-in-cheek place. But it's something that to this day I love. It's like a great horror movie, that has like a part that's knowingly cheesy, but cheesy in a totally brilliant way.
Did you? I don't know if we ever talked about this, but did you read comic books too?
Yeah, I love comic books.
All right, so for me, Wolverine was like one of my favorite characters, or still is to this day, actually. And when I saw that they had a record called Wolverine Blues with Wolverine, I was like, man, this is like got my name all over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like as far as like I've always been more of a fan when it comes to death metal of the more raw, kind of brutal death metal as opposed to the tech stuff too.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I think like Morbid Angel probably is the perfect balance between technical and just great songwriting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like for me, the bands that the death metal bands that really got me into the genre, outside of Morbid Angel and Entombed, were Deicide. I think those first 3 Deicide records are phenomenal. Bolt Thrower. Bolt Thrower had the groove. Obituary I mentioned as well. I always loved them. It was always the bands that kind of sounded unique, had their own sound, had their own vibe. But they had memorable songs, and sometimes kind of had that rawness to them as well, rather than something that's super technical. I appreciate and really respect people that are able to play like that. But especially when death metal kind of started moving in that tech death direction, that in kind of the early 2000s, you had bands like Brain Drawl and stuff like that. I mean, it just left me. Maybe it was because at the time I was also probably started to get more seriously into black metal, but it just didn't do anything for me. I wasn't excited by it. It doesn't sound aggressive to me. It doesn't sound menacing. I sometimes kind of jokingly say it, but I genuinely do mean it. I need a degree of menace in music to enjoy it.
Absolutely, and I think that a lot of the tech bands kind of take the punch out of death metal in some ways, and it's like I appreciate the technique because I'm not a I don't consider myself to be very technical when it comes to playing guitar, so I admire the ability to do that. But then again, like when I've seen some of these bands perform, I'm like, oh man, you guys are like kind of missing the point of all this. It's like. I started playing guitar because I wanted to like learn how to play like Slayer riffs and like meet slutty chicks and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And like get into like fucking satanic shit, and stuff. And
yeah.
And I don't think these guys have the same, kind of. I don't think that's why they're doing it. They're doing it because like they are these like guitar teachers and they went to school for technique and all that, and that's great, but. That's not for me, really. I like the grimier side.
I agree.
Of things.
And the thing is, when you see them play live, what they're doing is so intricate and so complex. They can't really do anything live, so the shows are dull as fuck.
Yeah.
Again, by contrast, I remember seeing Entombed play in London probably around the time that Inferno came out. So it was like 2003, 2004. It was a fucking awesome show. I mean, the songs have those peaks or those breakdowns or those really memorable bits where when you even if the sound is a bit shit live, they still stand out to you. But because they're probably by comparison to a Brain Drawl, very easy to play. The band goes nuts on stage. LG is super animated. It's just like there's a vibe to that I would take 10 times over. Just four guys standing there playing the most technical music that they can. Again, hats off to you if you like that sort of stuff. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And there are some technical bands I really enjoy, but like by and large, it's not my thing that I go to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like for me, technical stuff that I enjoy when it comes to death metal, I think Suffocation's pretty technical, and I love them, and Dying Fetus. But Dying Fetus is a different kettle of fish altogether. The breakdowns and the heaviness of the fetus is what is one of the main reasons I'm into them.
Oh, dude, both of those bands have the most like knuckle-headed beat-down parts that in all of death metal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I love both bands. They're great, and they are technical.
Super technical. Just kind of pivoting back to what I said about shows that had a particular vibe, or where you feared for your life. The first time I saw Suffocation, it was probably one of the only times that I thought this place someone is gonna get murdered here this evening, because the people were absolutely losing it. And Frank Mullen as a frontman is so great because he's got such a commanding presence. He does that kind of weird thing where he doesn't really headbang. He looks like a fucking movie villain playing an organ or something. He just moves his head and like looks at the audience, and the audience just respond and go nuts. What a phenomenal band.
Yeah, they're fucking legendary out here too, man. Like especially being in the tri-state area, like Suffocation is like one of the kings. I mean, them along with Immolation and Incantation are like some of the most revered bands out here.
Yeah. I think actually, we slag on on technical stuff, but Immolation's very technical too. And I think the difference is those bands prioritize songwriting. Technicality just happens to come along with it because they're such great players.
Exactly, and that's kind of like I would say this, along with like my statement about Morbid Angel, those bands have the songwriting is the number one thing, and
Yeah.
the fact that they shred hard beyond belief is just that's just the way they do it for them,
Yeah. Well, with Morbid Angel, the ancient ones are the most important thing. And as long as Trey is making them happy, then, then everything else is fine.
I recently interviewed John McEntee for the Holy Mountain magazine, and it was really cool to talk to that guy in person.
Yeah, Incantation, I listened to the last record and I was really surprised by it. I thought it was very, very cool. And I think John is also in Tribe of Pazuzu. And I had Nick Sagias from Tribe of Pazuzu on my show probably September time. And he's a fucking cool dude, and that's a great band as well. Really, really, really awesome.
Yeah. Have you heard that that super group that Petrov was in, Firespawn?
No, it was something that I thought when the news came out, that I need to actually look into, but it was something that I never really spent much time with. I think in part because around about the time that it came out, probably 80% of my time was spent listening to black metal. So it was just not something that would immediately sort of be on my list of priorities, but. Just based on the album art alone, I think it's definitely worth giving it a go.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's got like dudes from Dark Funeral in it, and it's like, I would cross over into that black metal realm.
Yeah, I know. So it's got Mata Modin from Defleshed in. It has got Frederick Folker from Unleashed. So I mean, yeah. Real crazy pedigree of people in the band. But for me, when it came to Entombed, the first three records were the main ones for me. And I know LG didn't sing on Clandestine, but that to me is one of the best Entombed records. And I've since also really developed a love for Left Hand Path.
Yeah, Left Hand Path was great. I really that's like probably my second favorite record by them. The first being obviously Wolverine Blues. That the band Morbid that Death was in, not Dead, not Death, Dead from
Dead. Yeah.
Petrov played drums in that.
Holy shit! I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's you can buy those demos. Like there's like I don't know if it's like I have MP3s of the Morbid demos. I think you can get it on like Bandcamp or something like that. And awesome, raw, just what you would expect, from Dead. Very depressing lyrics, stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm just actually looking at Metal Archives now, and I'm just spotting it. I'll definitely need to check that out. And by the way, just side note, Mayhem Appreciation Time. I still think, I know you and I spoke about it at the time, I still think Demon is one of the best records of the last several years. It is, I am amazed by how that band continue to deliver great music, after such a lengthy career and stay relevant. I think one of the hardest things to do for any band of that tenure is to make music that kind of still stands ahead of the pack. Because the pack, especially in black metal, are seriously hungry. There's so many good bands, but Mayhem for me are just they're in a league of their own.
I would say their last two records are pretty fucking amazing in my opinion, man.
I agree. I love Esoteric Warfare. I even loved Ordo at KO. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I defy anyone to listen to that album. Back to it's one of those records you have to listen to back to back. You can't. You can't just kind of put on one track in the background and then go off and do it do something else. It requires a lot of concentration and probably a lot of patience. But there's a track on there called Illuminate, Eliminate. If you do nothing else and you're hearing this, listen to that song because it is fucking brilliant.
What are your thoughts on some of the later Entombed stuff? Like, did you check out Entombed AD?
Yeah, I did. I was never quite as taken by that. I think the last album by Entombed that I really spent any significant period of time with was actually Inferno. And that was because I think it's because I was so blown away by them when I saw them live. You sometimes when you have that kind of an experience, you go back and you listen over the things that they've done. I like Morning Star that came out in 2001 a lot as well. But after that, they kind of fell away from me a little bit. I think I probably listened to Bowels of Earth, which was the last Entombed AD record, once or twice. But 2019, I mean, that was a crazy year for music. That was, we just spoke about Demon now. It was the year Demon came out. There was so much good stuff that came out in that year. It becomes hard to prioritize certain bands, and I've gone away from the point where I'll listen to or spend any amount of time with a band just because I'm nostalgic, or I used to like stuff, or I like their earlier stuff. If I'm not blown away inside of 3 songs, then I'll move on to something else.
Yeah, man. So, what do you got in store for everybody on Into the Necrosphere? Anything cool coming up?
So I've got a couple of people in the pipeline. I'm actually going to hit episode 100 this year.
Oh,
and I have thanks. And it was never the plan to do 100 episodes, so I'm fucking shocked that I'm here. But I've got a very short wish list of people that I would love to have on the show. One of them, I've spoken to their manager, and this person has said it should be okay. And I can divulge the name of the band, but hopefully that doesn't jinx it. But I'm hopefully going to have Nick from Paradise Lost on for episode 100. If he can't make it, then I'll try and find somebody else. But I'm such a fucking mark for Paradise Lost; it's ridiculous. So to have him on would be awesome. And then I've got a few others in the pipeline. I've been desperate to speak to Adam Agius of a band called Alchemist out of Australia. We actually had time scheduled to talk at the back end of last year, but he had something that came up. So we're probably going to try and do that in the next couple of weeks. I've had a very cool band who just signed to Apocalyptic Witchcraft. They're going to be on the show pretty soon as well. I need to remind myself of their name. This is purely down to me growing old, and I'm not able to remember everything quite as much as I used to. Ageless Oblivion. So very, very cool band who will definitely be on. And then I'll definitely have back on the show Sam Bean of Werewolves and the Antichrist Imperium. He and I recorded a nearly 3-hour marathon, and probably like one of my favorite episodes that I've done. Alongside the episodes I've done with you. And if you'll be back on, I'd definitely love you back on as well.
You can count on me anytime, man. Actually, to be honest with you, Into the Necrosphere really is literally the only other music podcast that I listen to. Like I generally don't listen.
A lot to me, mate.
Yeah, dude. My podcasting tastes. I listen to stuff about UFOs, MMA shows, general news related stuff about like politics and things like that, and like that's really it, man. I don't really listen. Horror. There's like a bunch of horror podcasts I like. There's like the Cults podcast, which is about different cults and everything. But I don't listen to a lot of music related stuff, and I think probably because for the last couple of years I've been just knee deep in doing my own music stuff, like in the podcasting realm. But yours I find very very engaging. And I think maybe because you and I are friends, and I like your style of talking to people,
Yeah. No, well, dude, I really appreciate that. And, it's like I said to you, I literally, the philosophy with the podcast is I hit record and we go. And we go wherever the conversation takes us. And unfortunately, I mean, I've only had 2 episodes where I would say, it was really difficult to tease a conversation out of the person. But then you also have, ones like I had a really fun conversation with Johnny Kelly of Typo Negative. I'm an enormous Typo Negative fan, so to have him on was awesome. It's slightly off the beaten path for what I would normally do on the show, but it's my show, so I'll do what I want.
Yeah.
But like I said, some of the ones you and I have done, were super fun. The one with Sam Bean was awesome. And then what I like most probably is when I get an unsigned band on, or I get a band that's slightly lower profile, and you have them come back to you and go, we've had like 5-6 people say to us on Bandcamp that they bought the record because they heard it on your show. So that to me is kind of part of giving it, giving something back to the show. Like I've said many times before, I'm never going to have a Patreon. I'm never going to ask people for money or any such shit. This is totally for me and to relax. And it's an escape from work. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to make some pretty good friends along the way as well. You included.
Oh, thank you, man. It's the feeling's mutual. And I'm going to share this bit of information for everybody out there. My first choice when I was asked about who would replace me on Metal Matters was you. You know that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know the first choice, but I mean, I was so gobsmacked when I got the message from you saying well, I'm interested in doing it. And the thing is, I wouldn't mind doing it if I could go somewhere and basically just take Into the Necrosphere as is, and it just gets put out by somebody else.
Yeah, no, I dig that, man. I understand that for sure.
But yeah, I've got an idea with the show, and I don't really want to change it. I don't want to ever do like something where there's an expectation that I'm going to speak to certain people, or I'm going to push certain kinds of music, or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's part of why I got away from writing for websites. Is I was getting nagged and hassled about doing reviews for bands that I thought were shit. It was like, I mean, how many more times can I say this Swedish melodic death metal band sounds like every other Swedish melodic death metal band, and they're garbage?
Yeah, I completely retired from writing rock music journalism a couple of years ago, and the only outlet I write for these days when it comes to music is the Holy Mountain magazine, which is a print-only magazine, by the way. And usually that's because for the same reasons. It's like I was trying to like tour and write and do other odd jobs to make a living for a while, and I'm like, I need a few $100s this month to make rent. So who can I interview, or what record can I write about? And I just got really sad, and I felt my passion for writing kind of like disintegrating, like with that sort of mentality. And so yeah, I like to be like a little bit more selective about what I write about. Like for example, like doing a piece on Incantation, or interviewing Stephen Von Till from Neurosis, an integrity piece. Like that's like right up my alley. And Danny asks me to do these things because he knows where my interests lie.
Yeah.
So I'm happy doing that, and I got another gig as a regular job to do, which pays my bills, and that's kind of how it is these days.
That's the thing with me too. I mean, I have a fucking busy job, and especially now that I'm managing people in the States and in Central America. It's like, I work 14, 15-hour days some days. Yeah. I don't have the patience all the time to have to listen to something I don't want to listen to, or review something that I have no interest in. It's kind of, this has to be something that's completely for me. I think that the turning point for me, and I stopped writing back in like 2010, 2011. It might have been a little later than that. The turning point for me actually was I got it, bizarrely enough, I got the first Death Grips mixtape. And I got so into the album that I actually ended up missing all my deadlines for reviews that month, because it was like, for the first time in a while, I just concentrated on one piece of music rather than this kind of conveyor belt of reviewing, one record and then move on to the next. And that kind of made me just realize, it's like I've missed out on so much cool stuff, because I literally only listened to a record 3-4 times, write the review, and then move on to the next one. And I was like, I can't have that. I need to go back to enjoying music the way that I used to, and that's why I stopped.
That's awesome, man. And it's like integrity. It's just like you don't want to like kind of half-ass your way through things. You want to give your full attention to something, and that's, I think that the product suffers unless you're passionate about it. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. Yeah, the thing is, music to me is so important. I mean, part of what got me to hi-fi is the love of music and wanting to hear music in a certain way.
Sure.
But again, music has to be something for me that it's not it's not something I do for a living, because I think if music became something I did for a living, it would bring with it baggage that I think would spoil it for me. It would take the shine off of it, and so that's why I would, I kind of try and keep that very separate from anything that I do that's existential.
Well, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you being part of the new era of Everything Went Black, and you've already been part of some of these efforts, and I really appreciate you coming back on the show.
Oh man, anytime you want me, I'm happy to come on, and the door is open to you anytime to come on to Into the Necrosphere. And again, I mean, I'm just so fucking chuffed by the stuff that you said before. If this was a video podcast, I'd probably be blushing, but I really appreciate it, man. And like I said, one of the best parts of doing the podcast is those kind of unexpected people that you hit it off with and you become friends with. So I'm definitely happy that we've met, and that we hit it off, and long may it last.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and stay tuned for next week, and we'll talk to you soon.